Welcome to the grind.
There's a 2-hour window I get to see my woman. There's a clock ticking on her. It ain't my friend. Work wasn't easy, but we've been fit. Oh, I'm home, and she's off to bed. Oh, no. Money, my baby liar.
Welcome, everyone, to the grind, the daily grind. I'm your host, Devin Murray. How was everyone's Wednesday evening? Did you watch a lot of NBA? I've watched some games this morning, trying to catch up, see what I missed. I'm also trying to dive deep on the two games that we have tonight. So we'll just do a quick recap. I won't go through all 14 games in depth, obviously. Give you a couple thoughts on my Celtics, Sixers interpretation of the game. Last night, not the best night that we've had betting, but we bet 13 of the 14 games, stayed away from the Nets, and went 6-7. Had two losses that were half-point losses, and both of those, they had free throws to cover, and they just missed them with under 5 seconds left. So, unfortunate. Could have been a positive night. Unfortunately, it's just a slightly negative night. But we're not going to let it keep us down. The first game that we'll talk about just real quick, the Hornets lost at home to the Wizards. I said that I thought that if the Wizards had a chance to cover, I didn't think they were going to win, but if they were going to cover, it was because they were going to get out and force the Hornets into some bad shooting, because the Hornets can't shoot threes anyway. And I thought that if the Wizards could speed them up, since the Wizards lead the league in pace, that maybe the three-point percentage would go down. And what do you know? Charlotte shot 8 for 25 on threes, just kind of got out of their game and lost. Pacers beat the Jazz. We'll talk more about the Pacers a little bit later because they play tonight in Mexico City. Hola to any of our international listeners south of the border tonight. Hopefully we're crossing some boundaries here. The Knicks beat the Spurs. Not a great night for Wemby. And the Knicks just had a pretty solid performance at home. Pretty much everybody contributed. Got out to an early lead. Spurs only scored 16 points in the first quarter. Also came out in the third quarter, and the Knicks just put it back on them. We're in control pretty much the entire game. So that 10-point spread messed a lot of people up with the Spurs. A lot of people thought that was a lot. Initially, if you listened to the pod yesterday, I thought that was a lot. I was leaning Spurs, and then after looking at some things, we went with the Knicks late. Nets beat the Clippers. This line moved to about 5.5 for the Clippers. I ended up staying away from it. Just wasn't sure what was going to go on. I kind of wanted to see Harden again before I bet on him. And I didn't watch this game because I didn't bet on it. But apparently it was just super, super sloppy and not impressive for anybody. So glad we stayed away. Glad I didn't have to watch that. Although I was leaning Nets, so I would have won the bet, but it is what it is. Another one that scared a lot of people off just because of the number. Pelicans lost in Minnesota by 21. The spread was 10. And we took the Timberwolves there. No Zion, no CJ. There wasn't much that the Pelicans were going to get done against the number one defense in the league. Another underdog call, I guess we can, I guess we'll go with it. Even though we're just taking spreads, I liked them straight up. The Houston Rockets beat the Lakers. Just dogged them in the first quarter. Got up in their jerseys, weren't playing around. And the Lakers are still winless on the road. Next game up that we did was we took the Pistons against the Bucks. It was a 12.5-point spread. The Bucks ended up winning by 2. It was kind of a weird play because Giannis got ejected in the third quarter, early in the third quarter, whenever the Bucks were up 12 after a transition bucket. He got up in Isaiah Stewart's face. I went back and watched it. They were kind of getting at each other the whole game. I kind of understand now why the refs gave him the second technical. because the last thing that you want to have to do is break up a fight involving Isaiah Stewart. There's a lot of guys in this league that are hold me back guys that you don't have to worry about actually going at each other. Isaiah Stewart is not one of those guys. You better hold him back because he will go after somebody. And probably best thing for Giannis, I mean, they get the win, so who cares that they didn't cover in the long run? You keep Giannis from having a fractured orbital bone because Isaiah Stewart got a little pissed off. I was going to say, because I've watched a couple of Pistons games now, Isaiah Stewart is constantly on the edge of losing it. Every single game he's getting into it with somebody. It's ridiculous. And the thing that's weird about Isaiah Stewart, he's like this big, like stocky frame guy who wants to fight, but he's got a pretty like feathery shot. He's got some touch on his little floater, like his little 10-foot jumper. It's usually not what you expect from a guy that just likes to scrap, because on the basketball court, if you've played a lot of pickup basketball, you know that the main guy that wants to sit out there and fight is the dude that can't shoot. Of course he wants to fight. He can't put the ball in the basket. Like Steph Curry's never trying to fight anybody. He just wants to play his little finesse game and get his shots up. Isaiah Stewart wants to get his shots up, and then he wants to give you a two-piece across your chin. But I digress. We'll talk more about the Bucks later. But I thought that ejection was really interesting. And if you watch the whole game, you kind of see why they had to do it. But we covered there. I thought 12.5 was a lot anyway. Granted, it was right at the number whenever Giannis got ejected. It was a 12-point game. But hey, we lost 2 half-point bets. We'll take a Giannis ejection. Also, of note, Giannis can be a bit of a hothead. He has headbutted somebody. This dude also put his shoulder into... Who was that? It wasn't Mike Dunleavy Jr. unless it was Mike Dunleavy Jr. where he just plowed him into the front row on a 3-point shot. So, not the first time we've seen Giannis have his emotions get the better of him. The next one that we had was we took the Thunder over the Cavs. The Cavs were favored on the road against OKC for some reason, and SGA was a play this whole time. Like, he was going to play the whole time. It's not like he was a late ad or anything. I know that he had been in and out of the lineup. And what's he do? He goes in and puts up 43. And they win by 8, and they were up 13 going into the fourth quarter. Again, some of these... It's a shame that I've kind of set the precedent that I'm going to bet on every game. I really might throttle down on that because there are some lines that I just like better than other ones. And I feel like since I am paying so much attention this year compared to other years, that I maybe should trust my inclination a little bit more, or at least clip up a little bit, bet a little bit more on the games that I feel really strongly about, because that was definitely one of them. One of the games that we lost was Suns at Bulls. The Suns won by 1 in overtime. They were 1.5-point favorites. What do you know? They led by 4 going into the fourth quarter. So say whatever you will about the bet. I'm fine with it. It happens. Nurkic had 2 free throws at the end, though, and missed both of them. The next game up, we lost this one. We took the Mavs against the Raptors. Mavs lost straight up. They were 4.5-point favorites, I think. They got dominated in the paint and got dominated on the offensive glass. Offensive rebounds were 15-6. They lost the rebounding battle by 12. So just a lot more opportunities there for Toronto. I didn't watch the game, but that seems pretty cut and dry there. Now I see what it was. Derek Lively's out. That must have been a late revelation. I don't think I knew that going into that. I don't think that I would have taken the Mavericks. So that's why you have to check the injury report. Next up, Nuggets beat the Warriors by 3. They were 3.5-point favorites because, of course, they were. Again, they had a free throw at the end that they missed that would have given them the cover. I have not gone back and watched that game, but I'll go ahead and tell you, I'd bet Denver again if I had to, especially with Draymond out. So, yeah, never going to be 100%. If you got any comments on why we should have bet the Warriors instead, then comment down on the YouTube link or on the Spotify channel. The last game of the night, we'll go back and talk about I think just the Celtics game is the only one that I want to get back to. Oh, and the freaking Grizzlies for a second. But took Sacramento minus 8.5. Jeremy Grant came out and scored 38. So hit 5 threes. I don't know. What do you people want from me? I don't even know. De'Aaron Fox out. I just thought that they were going to light the beam, but lost in overtime. Or no, won in overtime, but didn't cover. They only won by 3. So pretty back and forth game the whole time. They just weren't able to get any separation with Jeremy Grant putting up 38. But again, not what I would consider a terrible bet. I stand by my reasoning, you know. All right, real quick. The Grizzlies are so bad that I'm going to have to do my own little breakout video on them. It's my team, my hometown team. I haven't really watched a ton of them this year because this isn't really the team that it's going to be come the spring. But I needed to know what to expect as far as record. So I went back and watched this game, and holy crap. This is an awful roster that they currently can field a team with. The coaching is just so bad on the defensive end. For those that don't know, the Toronto Raptors grabbed the Memphis Grizzlies lead assistant head coach, Darko Rajakovic? Is that how you say it? I'm sorry. I'm really bad with Eastern European names. And for a while, I've been suspicious that Taylor Jenkins wasn't that great of a coach, and this season has just kind of solidified it for me. I don't understand the lineups. I don't understand the defensive rotations or the defensive responsibilities on pick and rolls. Again, I'm going to do a breakout video and break out some of. I just don't understand. And you could say maybe it's the players that they're just not executing the game plan. But if that's the case, then I put it on the work that they didn't get done in training camp. They knew that they were going to be shorthanded coming into this season. It's a real shame because they lost to Miami. We bet on the Grizzlies. Miami's awful. And I don't mean that they're a bottom 5 team in the NBA or anything. It's just whenever you think about, what would the Memphis Grizzlies versus the Miami Heat look like in 2023? This was such a bad game from both teams. And the Heat should have won by more. They missed plenty of open shots. Plenty of wide open threes. The Grizzlies' 3-point defense continues to be one of the worst in the league. And I feel really bad for Triple J and Desmond Bane because those guys are playing out of their minds. And these games would be absolute blowouts if it weren't for those two guys. Bismack Biyombo has his pros and his cons, but it's definitely nicer having him in there than not having him in there. If they can just get Xavier Tillman back, then maybe they can salvage something over a 300 record by the time Ja gets back. Because 1-7 is tough to come back from. Okay, last game that we'll talk about from last night was the game of the night. The Celtics went down in Philly, lost 106-103. Of course, we bet the Celtics. I think that with the Celtics and the Grizzlies that I'm now an 0 for 11 on them, 0 for 12. So if you've been doing all of my bets other than my games involving the Grizzlies and the Celtics, then you're killing it because it's really the only thing holding me down. I will say that after last night's game, I still think the Celtics are better. I say this mostly serious. The only thing that the Sixers really have going for them is Patrick Beverley. What he does for them in transition on defense and on offense, if you're watching the video version of this podcast, I'm throwing up some stats real quick for you to look at. He's in the 94th, 95th percentile on offense and defense in transition. And then if you go to team efficiency, he's 100th percentile in effective field goal percentage for defense. Pat Bev might be having, impact-wise, the best season that he's ever had. But even though the Celtics lost, it's hard for me to knock either of these teams These were the top 2 net rating teams in the league coming into last night after a close game last night. Obviously pulled their net ratings back a little bit, and they still lead the league in net ratings, both of these teams. My concerns for the Celtics are this. Is their second unit defense that good? I don't think so. I think that there's a lot of holes. I think that they can't really stop the initial penetration from the wing very well. And then I don't know if Jaylen Brown being your second offensive option is a great thing. There at the end, there were a couple of possessions where Tatum just didn't even touch the ball, and whenever he did, it was kind of like a Tatum drive it in so he can kick out. Like, obviously, the defense is going to collapse down on him. They weren't even really giving him any screens or anything, running him off any action. It's like you have Jason Tatum, and instead they're giving the ball to Drew Holiday, giving the ball to Jaylen Brown. When that game really got away from them, this is how their possessions went. Jaylen Brown, clank 3. Derek White, clank 3. Drew Holiday, contested layup, no basket. Next possession, Derek White, clank 3. Whenever they finally did break that streak and they did score, it was a KP3 where Jason Tatum never got the ball. Jaylen Brown, if you take him against teams that aren't named the Washington Wizards or the Charlotte Hornets, he's 14 for 47 from 3. Under 30%. That's not who I want as my number 2 offensive option. Especially if he's getting a lot of his touches whenever my number 1 offensive option is taking the ball into the paint and then kicking it out to a guy like Jaylen Brown. And he has no hesitation on hooking up that shot. It's just not a good shot. And I watched him handle it in the paint last night. Dude dribbled it off his foot. Like, I'm glad he worked on it all offseason, because I can't imagine how bad it would have been had he just not done anything. Dev, you said you weren't going to criticize either of these teams. I know what I said. It's just frustrating. It's just frustrating to be proved right over and over and over and over. All right, that's all I'm going to say about last night's game. Let's get to tonight's games in Mexico City. 2 games that we've got tonight are the Milwaukee Bucks and the Pacers, and the Hawks and the Magic. I guess I could have learned the Spanish names for both of those teams. So we'll just go with the El Buccos, the La Pesaras, and then the La Hawkas and the El Magicos. How about that? I bet that's pretty close. Like, sadly, languages are silly. I bet that's pretty accurate. Even if it's not accurate, I bet you if I went to Mexico and said it, people would know what I was talking about. So I'm pretty much bilingual. Okay, so the first game of the night is Bucks Pacers. Bucks opened up as 4-point favorites. They're now 1.5-point favorites. If you look at the injury report, there's 2 questions right now. Giannis is probable. Obviously got ejected last night. Lillard is questionable with right calf soreness. Now, I understand that the line's moving 2 points because of the Dame thing, but I don't care. I like the Pacers in this game. Let me tell you why. I went down a little advanced stats rabbit hole today since we only had 2 games. Went and watched the Bucks game last night. Went and watched the Pacers game last night. Here's my prediction. The Pacers are going to kill the Bucks in pick and rolls. The Bucks are now back to playing their drop defense coverage on most pick and rolls. So let me give you some stats. The Pacers are 7th in effective field goal percentage in the pick and roll game. The Bucks have the 3rd worst pick and roll defense, with the ball handler shooting 62% effective field goal percentage on pick and roll plays, where it goes to the roll man. They are 2nd worst in the league at pick and roll whenever the ball handler keeps it. This drop coverage just does not work for the Bucks. 3rd worst effective field goal percentage on defense whenever they have the ball handler keep it. Again, it's the 2nd worst pick and roll defense in the league, right behind the Jazz. And just to point out how bad of a coach Adrian What's-His-Face is, they're the number one pick and roll team where the ball handler keeps the ball on offense, but they have the 18th most possessions like that. I don't care if Lillard plays or not. I'm going to take the Pacers here. I'm probably just going to take them now because if Lillard is out, then the line is going to go even more towards the Pacers, and so 1.5 might be the best that you can get, plus 1.5. But for me, if Dame plays and the line goes up, might even sprinkle a little bit more because I don't think that this pick and roll defense for the Bucks is going to get any better if Damian Lillard plays. And one other advanced stat note, the Pacers are first in assist to turnover ratio. First. The Bucks are not going to get out and run on offense like they want to. All right, next up we've got Hawks and Magic. This opened up at Hawks -2. It's now Hawks -3. The public and all of the sharp money is all over the Hawks. Also to note, the public and the sharps tend to like the Bucks in that other game. Well, you're in for a treat, guys. I did some more advanced stats research that I think is very pertinent to tonight. And we'll stick with the pick and roll theme. You guys tired of hearing me say pick and roll? Well, then you're going to need to skip ahead. Maybe find a different podcast. I don't know, because I'm going to talk about pick and rolls a lot. Because if you watch the NBA, it's 70% pick and rolls. The Hawks run a ton of pick and rolls. They have the 6th most possessions of pick and rolls in the league. Unfortunately, they're third to last in the league when it comes to pick and rolls with the ball handler, where the ball handler keeps it the entire possession and doesn't dump it to the roll guy. Here's the weird thing. They're first in the league whenever they give it to the roll guy. But you want to know what? When you go look at the possessions, they average close to 30 possessions of pick and roll a game, right? 23 of those times, the ball handler's keeping it. Also known as probably Trae Young or DeJounte Murray. Only 6 of those 30 possessions are getting to the roll man. They are number 1 in the league in offense when the pick and roll goes to the roll man, and they just refuse to do it. 23-6 is how those possessions usually shake out for the Hawks. And this isn't just about the Hawks. The Magic have the 4th best pick and roll defense when the ball handler keeps it. They have the 9th best pick and roll defense on the roll man. The Magic also are 3rd in deflections. So even if it's not going to the roll man, which obviously they don't like passing it into the roll man, if they're trying to kick it out, the Magic are long. They're ready for that. And I know that a lot of people think that the Hawks are going to get out and run. And yes, they do get out and run. The Hawks have the most transition possessions per game, but they're 18th in effective field goal percentage. Again, bad shot selection, bad decision making in the open court. They don't do a good job of capitalizing when the defense is their most vulnerable. I can't tell you specifically if that's a coaching problem or it's a player problem, but you're just not getting good shots. Because if you're number 1 in transition possessions per game, at some point you should be tiring them out. You should be figuring out, how do we win these 2-on-1s? How do we win these 3-on-2s? And whenever I'm looking at their points in transition versus the amount of opportunities that they have, it's just telling me that this is a sloppy team that I can't trust. So I'm glad the public loves them. I'm glad the sharps love them. I'm glad everybody loves them. Let everybody hop on the Trae train. I hope that it's a home game for the Hawks. I hope that Trae Young is feeling himself. I hope he feels muy en fuego. I hope he starts hucking up some threes. I hope every time that he gets a ball screen at the top, he doesn't even look at the roll man. Because that's exactly what the Magic want to happen. It's exactly what I want to happen. I'm taking the Magic +3. So that's it for tonight's games. Only 2 games tonight. We've got a full slate going into the weekend. Tomorrow night is the second night of the in-season tournament. Get ready to wear your sunglasses inside watching TV. Those heinous courts are coming back. But we're focusing on tonight. I feel good about these 2 bets. We did some deep dives. Let's come through with them one time. Let's go 2-0 on the night. I'm taking both of these teams on the spread, and then I'm going to sprinkle a little bit on a 2-game parlay. We're going for the El Double Dippo down in Mexico. Thanks again for listening. Make sure you're following us on Twitter at The Grind Podcast, on Instagram at The.Grind Podcast, and on YouTube, Spotify, everywhere you can get us. Rate us. We deserve it. You know it. You deserve it. You're putting time into this. Have some people to talk about with it. Spread it around. Treat me like a UTI. Give me to all your friends. Okay, that's enough of me talking about that kind of stuff. I hope everyone has a good night. Don't lose a bunch of money. This is all for fun. Thanks again for listening. I'm Devin Murray. This has been The Daily Grind. We will see you tomorrow.
Easy, but we've been fit. Oh, I'm home, and she's off to bed. Oh no, money, my favorite life.